Looks like everybody's joining. Thanks for joining us today. I can't believe it's October already. Some people already on fall break, and if you've joined us today from your fall break, thanks for being here. This is our third installment of our evidence-based practice network for this year. We're excited to bring back Jennifer Sowers today to be with Dr. Thomas. And talk with us about implementing this practice in school settings. So I will stop talking now and let them take it away so you guys can hear all the wonderful things they have to tell you today.
All righty. Let me get this going there. Can everybody see my screen? And is somebody manning the waiting room there for me? Okay.
I will check it for you.
Okay. There you go. All right, let's get started. Um, well, we're going to talk about instructional routines and formatting, which can really save you a lot of time as a teacher, and that's very important. So, Jennifer, do you want to introduce yourself and tell what you do?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Sowers. I'm a seventh grade teacher at Cario Middle School, which is in Charleston County School District. This is my 31st, I think, year. Been doing it a hot minute. And I look forward to hearing some of your awesome ideas that perhaps I can implement in my classrooms and hopefully giving you something to think about as you deal with all the fun things that teaching has to bring.
Perfect, thanks. And I'm Susan Thomas, and I work with Academic Alliance as a facilitative coach, and um, am so always happy to be back with Jennifer. We worked together. Boy, it was a while ago in the Berkeley County School District, so it's fun to be back together. And it's something we have always shared is our love of instruction. And so it's fun to be with you. Just a little bit for those of you that may be new about the Academic Alliance. We are funded out of the Office of Special Education Services at the South Carolina Department of Education, but we are housed at the University of South Carolina. And our mission is really to share evidence-based practices and to work with schools and districts to help us learn better ways that we can serve kids so that they can grow both academically we also talk about their social competence. And so we're here to do this. This is one of the things we do, our Evidence-Based Practices Network. Um, this is our great team. Dr. Mitchell at the University of South Carolina is our senior advisor. He is the person that started this and got this contract. Deanna Parrish, who was on just a minute ago, is our program director. Jenny Saunders is our program coordinator. You see my picture. And then Ginger Cato also works with us as our general education partner, and she is also a facilitative coach. So we're glad to be here today. Before we start that, nothing, at least nothing I share is anything original. Everything I've learned from a couple of great places, and I just wanted to give you these resources. And in a moment, I'll make sure you have access to this presentation. But one thing that's really important is that you understand that there are a couple of places you can go. The Missouri Effective Teaching and Learning Practices has some great ideas for teachers. I love them because they're teacher friendly. And if you click on this, it'll take you to this website where you can get a lot of tools for your classroom. The other one, of course, is the Explicit Instruction Book. I say everyone should have one on their desk. Great ideas that guide instruction and really let us know what explicit instruction is. So nothing's original with me. Jennifer's got lots of original things. But today, before we finish, we hope that you'll know what some behavioral instructional routines, and maybe you'll put a few in the chat and share with us. We'll talk about what are instructional formats for learning, why we use them, and then we're going to give you some examples, and then we'll talk about ways that you can implement in your classroom. And we want to hear some ways you've implemented, certainly. That's the power. I love, Jennifer, that you said that to begin with, that it's great to hear what other people are doing. This is how we grow and learn better ways. Um, So a couple of things as we're getting started. Why do we need consistent instructional routines and formats? Well, one thing, and I have this myself sometime, we know that when we put these in place, it reduces cognitive overload. And we know for students, particularly those who struggle, when you have students with executive functioning issues, this is crucial for them. It helps them to learn. They can really concentrate on all the important things. Um, it increases student engagement, believe it or not. There have actually been a lot of studies done to support this. And finally, this is the number one reason kids are better behaved. So when we put these routines in place, when we have these instructional formats, we get better behavior. And I think everybody wants that. Jennifer, can I get an amen?
Yes, you can get an amen. And I was actually wanting to open this up real quick. I hope it's okay. It's off script, but because I know, we're just finishing up quarter 1 here in Charleston, and I know at the beginning of the year I get a new batch of seventh graders. So all they know how to do and be is a sixth grader. Like that's their greatest, largest accomplishment to date. And at the beginning of the year, they're coming into my room, my routines, all these things, and they're very nervous, right? They're asking me 100 questions before I can even like get directions out of my mouth. And I'm always like, pin that for a second. I think I'm going to answer all your questions. But again, I always keep telling them, just trust me. We're going to get into a routine. There's a method to my madness and all the things. And I'm just wondering if other teachers have that same kind of anxiety when they get that new batch of kiddos at the beginning of the year. But then by now, I mean, they walk in, they're like if one of them will raise their hand and another one will turn and be like, she knows what she's doing. Let her tell us what to do. And also I feel it's because they know what to expect. And I think they're calmer. They're ready to learn. So it's exactly what Susan was talking about. It's just that comfort in that routine. So I was wondering if any of you other folks want to either unmute yourselves and throw out something or type it up and we can share. I was just curious if it's just a me thing.
Would love to hear some comments there. Feel free to unmute.
She didn't say that to me, by the way.
I did not. Trying to give a little wait time.
Is that important?
It is important.
I'll speak up a little bit. I teach special ed, obviously, and I have resource students, but I tend to, because I have a background in autism, I tend to get the students that are a little more, have a lot more energy than some of the others. That might be the way to put it. And what I get amazed by each year is just the differences of the way the children are. That you know, a lot of them have more trouble in those general ed classes, and um, there's so many kids in those classes. I think it makes a difference, but just trying to always find a way to not only help them when they're in my room, but help them when they're in their general ed class too. Seems to be, important, and it sure does make those other teachers really respect what you do and appreciate it. When you're willing to say, I'll make everything and fix it for them, and I'll be the one to monitor it and everything, so they don't have something added. I taught general ed for a long time, and I know how it is with so many kids, but I definitely, this was so interesting to me, which is why I wanted to take this today, because I think a lot of this sounds like something not only can I use, but that I can share with them too.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Debbie, that
Absolutely.
was music to my ears because
Yes.
we know, and I started out in general ed. And so we certainly know that if we can come together and have those routines, not only does it help our students with disabilities, guess what? Helps a lot of other students need that. We've got lots of kids who have 504s, lots of kids with executive functioning that are not identified. But, everybody likes a routine. And so I think that's great.
Ryan, please go to the
And I
car
think when we
item.
can work together on them, it's even better. So I always like to talk about what is a routine. And I love this because this is not for me, it's from Missouri, because we think about routines as being something we write. But actually, routines start out as procedures or steps. And so we have to think about the steps to complete any task. And then once we have taught those steps to mastery and given a lot of feedback so students know exactly how to do it, it starts a pattern of behavior. And that's what builds a routine. So I tell people all the time, I've been in education in the 40s years, so I've been here a long time, in it a long time. I have to take care of my skin and I have a routine. So I have something I do every morning and it's a routine. I have a pattern of behavior. And so it's not just routines for, school, but this is a life skill for everybody. And we can talk about that a little bit more. So remember, you've got to have those steps, but where I see the breakdown is teaching those steps and getting kids to mastery so that they can become a pattern of behavior. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. Jennifer, anything there?
No, I mean, I think you hit it dead on because it's not just about, for my seventh graders or, just anyone. I mean, I know I don't like it when my schedule changes. I don't know if any of you that are logged on like it, like when all of a sudden they announce a schedule change. I mean, it kind of makes me I get a nerd for a second, but I also have the coping skills to deal with it. But I think just that establishing routines, that's like lifelong, uh, skill that we all need. And it helps us feel secure and be able to navigate when bumps in the road occur.
Absolutely. So, first things first, let's talk about routines for behavior during instruction. So think about things that we want kids to do. So a lot of times we talk about, okay, I've got a routine for arrival, I've got a routine for dismissal. But in the chat box, how about putting some things that you actually have routines for during instruction? Or you can unmute. We're glad for anybody to unmute.
Hi, I'm Dawn Brzezinski, and I teach ML in Horry County, specifically at Socastee Elementary School. And this year I have first graders, third graders, fourth graders, and fifth graders. And I have them for usually 45-minute sessions. So as soon as we come in, my routine is we ask what is our big question, and then I hold up what the behavioral expectations are. We go over that every single day. And the kids know it by heart. We do it in Spanish and in English. And then sometimes if I do forget, they will remind me. And if they are not doing it, one of the kids will get up and take the little onesie sheet and put it near the kid who needs it for visual support, just to remind them that, it is not okay to be in your seat swirling around, that you need to be sitting bottom to bottom, back to back. And
Perfect.
It's comfort, like you said, it's a comfort for the kids. They need to know where their boundaries are.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing, and great job. I'm impressed that you do it in Spanish. That's awesome. All right, anybody else? And I can't see.
Oh, someone mentioned about the smart passes for leaving class. Yep.
That's a great one, when they can leave. I think about there are a lot of different ones, but we do need to have those during instructional times. I know one of the big things is when you're transitioning in between classes a lot of times, or even groups, transitioning between groups. Sometimes when I'm in classes, I'll see some teachers that have really clear routines and some of them not so clear. And so it's really important to get those in place. All righty. I'm having trouble getting there we go. All right.
This is all me. Okay, so expectations everywhere. So routines and structure have many benefits, as we're already hearing from y'all. So this. So I'm not gonna preach to the choir, but I kind of am, because again, you just never know the audience that we're gonna get at one of these webinars. And so, but they do, as we mentioned, they provide that sense of security. It's like they come in, they know what's gonna happen, they know what items to get from the cabinet, and that they need to have their pencil, their calculator, whatever it is. They do help reduce stress. they help develop those essential life skills, as we already mentioned. And of course, we want them eventually. I love, Dawn, that you mentioned how, you do it every day, but like then these other ones are independent in it and then actually coaxing the other children, future teachers of America. I love that. And it also allows them, again, as I said, to kind of, when something doesn't happen, when there is a schedule change, something like that occurs, they're able to handle it without getting all worked up about it or as worked up about it. Some of them will always get worked up. That's just the way they are. But some other things, like I know, different classes have different methods for getting attention from the teacher, for turning in papers. I'm working with I say new, she's new to me. She's a 7th-year teacher. And if someone starts asking her about homework or something like that, she's like, I'll talk to you about that when we're talking about homework at the end of class, or you should have talked to me about that at the beginning of class. And she's not rude. It's just setting up the parameters of when things are okay to ask. And so they know that, in fact, they'll walk up and be like, nope, never mind, I'll ask you later. So and again, it just sets up that structure, that security. They know how things are supposed to happen throughout the day. I know most people have different procedures for where student materials are. So with me, at the beginning, the first couple of weeks, they kept asking me, can I borrow a pencil? Can I sharpen my pencil? And I have an entire wall of my room, and it's labeled student supplies. And so I would just point, and now they're just like, they'll start walking to me and then they're like, never mind, because they know where to go. So it is very important to have those routines and structures in place. And then, because when we know what's expected, we can actually perform at the level that is expected.
You said some great things, those reminders. And I love that kids, it's a routine when kids just can do it.
Mm-hmm.
You've established a routine. But we had some great things in the chat box that I just looked at, how to start work, how to turn in work, all of those things. And I think having those reminders and visuals in class too, for when students forget, I don't know, sometimes people forget routines, but I think for adults, we need to be reminded of this, of how much we like routines and how when things get changed, it's harder. And so we like to know what's going to happen every day. Most people I know like that. And so it's good for us to remember the importance of it and why we have those expectations and why we're clear about them. So just if you already do this, but if you are working with a teacher, here's a reminder for designing routines that through some research at the University of Missouri, they've really found out 3 to 5 steps, no more than 5, 3 is even better. You've got to make sure that you know what it looks like, what that behavior looks like, and what it sounds like. These should be things that we can see and we can hear what they sound like. But I always say the test is the AMPUA test. And that means when I finish, everything is observable. I can see it. It's measurable. It's a behavior I can count. It's positively stated of what I want the student to do. It's understandable for their level. So some of you, I heard somebody say they had some visual, they may have pictures. Whatever developmental level we have is what you use. And then it's always applicable. So it needs to be something that you do every single time. And so you really have to think about that when you're designing routines, that you make sure it's always the case. And that's really important for students. So here's just an example of working with a partner, sitting down thinking about what does that look like and what does it sound like? Well, it looks like I'm looking at my partner. I'm leaning towards the partner with answers and ideas, and I'm on task. And this got messed up. I'm on task. And then what it sounds like is a whispering voice, one voice responding to partner, so only one person's talking at the time, and then kind words and tone. Sorry about that. Little mistake there. So that's what it looks like and sounds like. So if we start doing that and think about this, because this isn't something that's natural, a sequential step, but I know exactly the behaviors I want to see, so that can turn into a little acronym to help students remember. Look out for great partners. So lean in and look at your partner, be on task, have one voice, and use kind words, tone, and actions. And of course, I'm going to teach what each one of these looks like and sounds like. And I'm also, before I do this, going to do my AMPUA check. Can I observe it? Sure can. Can I measure it? Could Jenny Saunders, who's the school psychologist, come in and count the number of times a student did it? Absolutely. Is it positively stated? Yes, because it's what we want students to do. Is it understandable? Yes. And is it always applicable? Absolutely. So it passes the test. It's clear and concise. And I can give students reminders. I know in the school where we had students, the whole school had behavioral concerns, and they had cards with their expectations on them so that we could use them for quick reteaches when we needed to do that when they were having trouble. Take it away, Jennifer.
Yeah, before I do that, I just noticed one of the questions in the chat that had to do with kind of routine. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in on that if that's okay. Debbie asked about you still get papers without names on them. Yeah. So I know in your elementary school, correct? Yeah. So I know in when we get to middle school, they have to have their MLA heading. So it's not just their name, it's their name, the teacher's name, the class period and subject, and the date. And so it's a struggle those first couple weeks, but we have posters in all the rooms, either a poster or like the entire setup is on the wall or on the board as an example. And then of course the date is updated. And it took a few weeks, but we did break them of not doing that. A lot of prompting, okay, we'll take a minute, we'll wait for everyone to get their name on there and just do a quick check. Now, do we still sometimes get one even, at the end of the first quarter without a last name, or like they just, they stopped writing the date, so the year's not on there? Absolutely. And we just circle it and bring it back, and when they get it back, it's that visual, like, oops, I forgot something, and just those consistent reminders. But it does get better, but it's just kind of, again, establishing those routines for that.
I think
don't know
that's
if
a
anyone
great
else has
thing.
a better idea.
I think that's a great thing you said, Jennifer, about the importance of every day, particularly at the beginning, reminding. And I think then when you have things posted like that, you can refer students to them quickly when they forget.
Yeah. And I spend like a lot of time the first 9 weeks reminding them that there's no prize for being the first one done, because that's what it is. When they don't put their heading on there or their name on there, they're trying to hurry up and get it done. And so, in fact, when we're done, and sometimes we're like, what do I do when I'm done? Like, we wait for everyone else to finish, so there's nothing cool that they're going to do next for, like, and I don't mean forever, but like for a few minutes. So that way they'll go back. I'm like, what I would do is I'd flip my paper back over and look it over, make sure I didn't miss any, make sure I capitalized all just the quick review, and then make sure our heading's on there. I mean, and I'm still saying it now. So again, Debbie, I wish I had an easy fix. I don't have a name stamp. I don't know, but that's all I can think of for that.
And we all need those reminders. I think that's the thing, is we all forget things, even though we do them a lot. So having that makes it easier.
I was just going to say the frustrating part though is I pass out the papers. I don't have more than 9 children at a time. And I don't start until I've said at least 3 times, put your name on your paper, put your name on your paper. And then, like I said, it just gets frustrating when you've said it, I've walked around, I've pointed to it to get them to do it. And I'm just asking for a first name. But I have not thought about actually putting it up on a chart or on the wall. That I think is something that I'll try next, because then I can just point to that and you know tell them to make sure that's been done.
And before
But
they can turn it in, is there like a turn in bin, and there can be that visual right there. Is my name on it? Did I blank, just even if it's just, is my name on my paper? And then if they can say
right,
yes and have pencils right there.
Yeah. And also,
I think that would be a great idea.
if you're
Thanks.
changing behavior with a few, going around and finding the kids that are doing it and saying, you've got your name on your paper just right. That's perfect. you've got your name on your paper get just right. That's perfect. I'm
Mhm.
looking for people, especially when you're trying to change a few behaviors.
Mhm.
So that gives it one more time for them to hear it, you know. And also you may just even put a little reinforcer system in there, where I love the student teacher game for this, especially if I've got more than just one child, where you're giving points to the students. If they all do it, they earn a point. If you got some that don't, you earn the point. Great. We have some things on that are a great reinforcer for kids too. All righty, I'm gonna let you take that next one, Jennifer, if I can get it. There you go.
Okay, so the fake it till you make it. Like this is, I mean, and listen, I know everyone is tired. You've been working all day, but we have all used this ourselves in classes, in meetings, in front of our bosses. So the whole slant thing. So I love this, and I do teach this to my students, and I know the sixth grade teacher does as well. So when they come to me, they're already doing it. The sitting up, during the instruction, no slouching down, that leaning forward. So, you're not flailed back and looking very, disinterested, asking questions. And it's funny because I can tell the students, like I hear from the gen ed teachers when they go back, they're asking questions, but they're not always 100% on topic or what we're doing. But you can tell they're trying to kind of check that box about asking a question because they'll be like, how was your weekend? Okay, well, we're talking about Thailand right now, but okay. I did not go to Thailand. And then the nodding your head when somebody's speaking. And then if the speaker moves, then your head moves and you're tracking them around and getting that. And again, in the beginning, it's fake, it's forced. They're just doing it because they're told to do it and taught that. But if you're doing all these things, if you're sitting up and you are leaning in and you're actually listening enough to ask a relevant question, and then you're hearing what's going on and they're going to be more engaged and they're going to get more from the lesson. So again, I tell the kids too, I'm like, you're just faking it right now. But then eventually they're going to be like, wow, this actually works. And I actually remember what Miss Smith said during math class today. And I was actually able to ask a question that was on topic and help me with my assignment.
And we use this as a school-wide learning
Mhm.
position in our school. So every teacher used it, and that makes it great. It's an idea. So it got to where we could just say slant, and students knew exactly what we were talking about. We're looking for kids who are in the slant. And so once they get a routine, it's really easy to reinforce.
Oh, and so Susan asked me to put like, I don't know, one or two things on this slide, but I went a little rogue and I went a little crazy. So she had one already on here just about, and I think one of you mentioned just like, getting the kids like to, I don't know, pay attention to listening to what we're saying. Sometimes that's half the battle. And so Susan already had on the hand signal for stop, look, and listen. I've seen some teachers do that one. And so that is obviously if they know what it means. And so the first thing they're going to do is stop, then they're going to look at you, and then they're going to listen to you. I am a admitted and self-proclaimed dork, and so I have no problem embarrassing myself and around 12 and 13-year-olds. So I am willing to make everything silly. It matters not to me if they laugh at me or with me. Either's good. So I do still use some very cheesy callbacks. I'm literally this morning in class, I was like, hocus pocus, and all the seventh grade class. Now, mind you, it was 8:40 in the morning. They're like, everybody focus. Literally, that's the amount of enthusiasm they had, but they did that, and so. And one that I know one of my coworkers uses is she'll go all set and she claps, and the kids will reply, you bet. And so then you know that they're listening, and it stops the other side conversations. And it just literally it prompts others to know that now it's the teacher's turn. I love this one. This is not mine, but you can bet this will be coming out in the next week or so is the all right, stop. Is what the teacher says, and then the students will respond, collaborate, and listen. There's some people in our little audience right here that have no idea about that, but most of us people of a certain age are smiling, and I love it. So a little, yeah, got a little rap music going on there, and so I think that's what I'm definitely going to incorporate into my class. So then we can also use some explicit directions paired with hand motions. I don't think I could talk if someone cut my hands off. I literally would be mute. No, Susan, that's not a good thing, by the way. And so one of the ones we use in both ELA and in math is I will signal with my hands. Journals are open because in both classes we start where they need their marbled journals to start the instruction. And so I'll say journals are open, mouths are closed. And so it helps. It's two things at once. So if they're kind of paying attention, not really, they see that my hands are going and they know what to do with that. So those are ones that have been useful to me in my classes. And again, I don't worry or mind if they giggle at me, because as long as they're giggling with their mouths closed and their journals open, because that is the expectation and that's what I'm trying to get them to do. Do any of y'all have anything that you use specifically to try to cue attention? Any ones I get? So, because I call seventh graders, all they are 4-year-olds in bigger bodies. And so I have no shame using, the macaroni and cheese, everybody freeze. I'm good with that too. So any other ones that you guys use that you'd like to share?
I've done in a big group, okay, everybody give me a penny, and everybody holds up their finger, one finger. Give me a nickel, and everybody holds up the 5 fingers, and give me a dime, and they hold up 10 fingers. And that really gets them to stop what they're doing.
Oh yeah, it would stop. And then also they have to listen to exactly what you're asking for. So I like that one too. It's like some processing in there too. I like that one. I'm going to write that one down right now.
And I
The
think
penny.
I think listening is so important, because sometimes you do have emergencies, and so having a listening cue is really important. The kids know that they've got to stop and quickly, go. So most people say, have one that you're really consistent with for kids. That helps, and that you've taught them exactly what it looks like. And you can change them up, but just make sure you teach them.
Right.
All right.
Just some other favorites. And again, I'm sure not all of us have these kids that just everything we do, they automatically do without any prompting, right? That's why we're all here, right? So that typically is not the case. And so when we are taking notes in class, if the gen ed teacher is up at the board, or whether it's me, if I'm looking around the room, as the teacher's writing notes on the board, I will say, when I write, and then then the kids say, we write. And so that prompts them. And it's so funny. I used that one in 3rd period today, and several kids were like, oh, I'm writing. Right. And they had to pick up their pencils and then, get onto it. Cause it is easy. Like, you're watching the teacher, you're listening, you're doing this. And so it is, sometimes it's not them being quote unquote, non-compliant. They're just zoned out a little bit. And so that's a good one I use. They seem to take to that one pretty well. A big one I will start with, pencil should be, and then they all have to say penciling, because yes, I did create pencil and make it a verb, because it is. And I did have one kid actually today, it was kind of cute. He is no longer allowed to use pencils. Long story, we'll get to another day. And he said, or penning, because he has to use a pen. And I was like, that's right. So pencils and pens should be penciling and penning. So we're turning everything into verbs. And this is a favorite one because, you have the people that they think learning is a spectator sport. It is not. But there is a participation award. And so when we ask everyone to go ahead and check the work of a kid that's working on the board, and I start singing and they do not like it when I sing, which I love and I use to my advantage. And I will say, everybody was calculating. And of course, it's to the tune of Kung Fu Fighting, and they pick up the calculators pretty fast because they just want me to stop singing. And then just my famous quick check to see if they are on board with what I just said, have any questions, is I'll just say capiche, and they all respond capoche. The first time I did it and they actually responded, made my day, and they made my teacher heart happy, as I said.
Those are great ones, and they're fun, and kids can even come up with some, which I love. Now you have penning. So that's pretty cool.
But yes, well, and I don't know if anyone else is, they want to make everything about 6, 7. And so of course,
I just saw it. I just saw
when
it. had done
Yes.
something with that too.
Yeah. So I did that. And every time they say 6, 7 in math class, I was like, oh, is that how many extra worksheets you want this week? And they're like, no, 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 no.
Oh, well, we've talked about those behaviors. So now we want to talk pretty quickly about instructional formats because that is just as important. And I think sometimes we forget and think the more we say and do, the better off it is for students. And that's not necessarily true. So an instructional format is really part of our lesson design and presentation script. And it can be used when we have one to accommodate a lot of similar tasks. And they're really important if you've ever used an intervention program, you may have seen some formats that are in a scripted program that are in there for you, but they work because they simplify your time. Saying things different ways is not always better. So we want kids to be able to really concentrate on the content. So if we have those formats or scripts in there, kids are concentrating on the content and not what we're trying to get them to do, the directions. So they're really important. They reduce cognitive load and they enable them to focus on that content and the way it's being introduced. Also helps us to ensure that we have all stuff and no fluff. This is Anita Archer saying, not mine. I told you everything comes from explicit instruction. And it's so important that we really limit our words with students. And a lot of times people go, oh, that's so boring. You do the same thing the same way all the time. It's not boring unless you are. You bring the excitement to it to make it fun and exciting. So we want to take a minute to listen to Anita Archer, and I'm hoping this is going to play. Oh, wait a minute, maybe not. We may not listen to Anita Archer. Yeah. Sorry. It's not playing, and I've got kind of a weak connection, and that may be why. That is actually in your presentation. I would suggest it never works when I do it. I would suggest you take a few minutes and listen to her talk about instructional formats. It's like a 3-minute video. It's pretty great. I know I downloaded it in there. I'm not sure why it's not showing up right now. So when do we use instructional formats? Particularly when students are at that acquisition and automaticity stages of learning content. So when we're first introducing something and when we're trying to get kids fluent on it. We use a lot of formats with correction procedures. And we use formatting when we do that I do and we do part of explicit instruction when we're modeling for students and also when we're doing it with them. And when students are having difficulty a lot of times with the content, it's because we didn't do enough with the formatting. And so we want to think about that as we're designing our formats. Anything, Jennifer, to add to that?
For sure. I mean, and I know as kids get older, they don't want to admit that they don't understand the content. And so I've had to have several conversations class-wide in the co-taught classes, not just from me, but from my co-teachers, about the time to ask questions and for help is not when we pass out the test or the assessment, because that's when they want to do it and they sit quietly until then. And so we will do like the thumb meters, like we'll get a quick radar from there. And like we're like, all eyes should be up on us. You guys just use your thumbs. And then I'm like, okay, so I'm thinking, the teachers and I will fake a conversation. I'm like, I don't know. I think 1 or 2 more examples would be good. And we do them together and then set them free. Or sometimes more than that to do their independent work that we're checking. And so they're starting to get better and more honest about giving us feedback instead of just sitting there blankly like, no, I'm good. Because no one wants to be the one to admit that they don't get it yet. So we have to make sure that when we are doing the guided practice that they are set before we expect them to do it independently.
Absolutely. And we develop those by determining the category of content or the skill we might be teaching. So you may be doing vocabulary. We're going to give you a couple of examples in a minute. It may be word problem solving. It may be something you do with decoding words or when you have students determining the main idea. So you're going to get a script that you use all the time, but you're going to change the content of what students are doing, a different story, different sentence, whatever it is. write your simple script, and then just change that content. I want to make sure you understand this goes along with any high quality instructional materials that you're using. Everybody's getting new text. I know a lot of people are getting new math text this year. A lot of people got new reading last year. This goes along with any of those materials because a lot of the programs are not specific enough on how to teach. I noticed in one of the reading series, the way they teach vocabulary, it needed to be a little bit more explicit. And so instructional formats will really help with that. So we love examples. So we've got a few. Jennifer.
Okay, we're starting with the sentences. Okay, so again, my current, expertise level or whatever I should say, what I'm surrounded by are middle schoolers. So a lot of these are middle school kind of standards. So, but just identifying the parts of a sentence. Now this can start in lower grades though. I'm doing it where we are trying to find the subject of a sentence, the predicate of a sentence, and if there is a direct object. And also an indirect object. And this grows so much from the beginning. So the first two things, we're just looking for the subject and the predicate, and we just ask the same questions. And it's hilarious because we start this the second week of school in our class. And then by the fourth quarter, when they are doing all these things independently, you can see the kids are still to themselves. You can see them asking the questions. So the sentence example is the teacher handed the students their graded test. And so the first question is, who's doing the doing? And usually if I said, who's doing the doing in the sentence, most of you could answer that it is teacher. And so that we have just found the subject of the sentence. The next question every single time, what doing did they do? And so in that case, we're going to find the verb. So what did the teacher do? Handed. And so most people could find that verb or predicate. And so then we go through it. I added this in. I actually borrowed some of this and then added to it with one of my co-teachers that I've been co-teaching with. This is year 6. When we were doing this, she kept talking about, so if it's a doing verb, then there's a DO. And I was like, and so I did like the hand gesture for the ASL, those finger spelling for D and O. So if it is a doing verb, then there will be or could be a direct object. And so you just say, since there's a doing verb, we're going to check to see if there's a direct object. And then they've already underlined the subject. They've already underlined the verb. And every single time, this is the question. Subject, verb, who? Subject, verb, what? And now we're going to find the direct object. So teacher handed who? Teacher handed what? So I hope no one said students. Is students the direct object? I hope the teacher's not picking up students and handing them around the room. They shouldn't be doing that, even if they're littles. So no, they're handing the paper. So that would be our direct object. And then you ask the next set of questions. Subject, verb, DO. So teacher handed test to whom or for whom, and then we found students to be our indirect object. But this script, again, it's got the 5 questions, but it will continue to grow when we add on predicate nouns, predicate adjectives, prepositional phrases, all the different things, and it just keeps building. But again, the first couple lessons were just who's doing the doing and what doing did they do. And we continue to grow that script.
Jennifer, I love this so much, and we were just talking last week about the importance of this, that it really does help with comprehension and identifying all that and reading comprehension. So doing this with individual sentences, we forget how much that helps them when they're reading. And so this is a great strategy. Love it.
You can grow this to main idea, main characters, all those things.
Yeah.
Okay, and then my dorkiness is going to show itself right here. So this starts as solving a 2-step equation with the dating story. And again, middle school, but I mean, it's 1-step equation start like in 5th grade. So you can actually start it then. It's more fun when you get a little bit higher because there's more things going on in the little dating story. And so the actual steps are, you're gonna, the thing I say every single time, if there's an equation on the board, I was like, what is the first thing we do? And of course, some of them want to raise their hand and tell me, of course you're going to add or subtract first because it's opposite of PEMDAS. I'm like, no. Before we do any of that, what is the very first thing we do? And then their hands will pop up, draw the line, because they're really thrilled about my things that I make them do. So we draw a line to keep things separated. So that is always the first thing, to draw the line through the equal signs all the way down to the bottom of their workspace. Then we talk about who's on the date. So we have 2 and X are on a date. There's a whole background story about it's the, she's a middle schooler going on the date. Dad's not ready for this, sends the little brother as a chaperone. So we actually draw a heart around the coefficient and the variable. Now I'm dealing with middle school boys. They don't love to draw a heart. So then, of course, it's draw a heart or just circle it if you're too cool to draw a heart. You're just keeping them together. But so we need to get rid of that chaperone, the little brother. And then, of course, in this case, it's a +5. And then I say, how do you get rid of the +5 or the +17, whatever it is? Because again, the steps are the same, the numbers and the variables will change. And they'll say, well, you subtract. And I said, correct. And so we'll subtract on that side. And then I hate a 0 in an equation. So I have added on that we zero it out and just put that big fat Z through it, because then we're not just putting random zeros everywhere and it confusing our math process. And then here's the other big thing. Fair is fair. Whatever you do, I'll be like, whatever we do on one side. And by this point of the year, they are so tired of me. They're like, you do it to the other. But I talk about how fair math is of a subject, because just like in fractions, whatever we do to the numerator, we do to the denominator. And so we've already gotten rid of the little brother. He's gone. But now it's curfew, 6 p.m. The little Miss X has to be home. She's got a very early curfew because she has a very overprotective dad. So she's got to go. And so now we have to separate the coefficient from the variable, which of course we would divide. So whatever we do on one side again, we do on the other. And then finally, X arrives home safely and meets her curfew. So again, this is one we use. We start it simple. We start with just the one-step equations to show that, and it keeps building. This can go on to even using it, my gosh, in their algebra classes. I know the 8th grade teachers come and talk to me. They're like, what is this whole dating thing you got going on? And so, because she's like, my kids are putting hearts on their papers. I'm like, good, because that means that they know what they're doing. So, but it was easy to come up with. It doesn't have to be as cutesy as this, but I actually borrowed this from a teacher a couple of years ago, and I keep expanding on it. But the kids get it. I mean, so by the end, they know all the different steps of what to do to get the, you can start fading the cuteness. So yeah, we're going to make sure we are isolating our, variable with our coefficient, getting rid of the constants. We can get to the terms, but again, teaching them the process first.
Love it. And also then adding in that math terminology after they get going. Love this one.
Correct.
Here's just an example that I thought was pretty good for thinking about statistical literacy and data analysis, because that's something we have to do. And this is an example that I pulled for you about formulating questions, and it gives you the steps that you would do, but you would have these steps every single time, and you would model with students what they're supposed to do. Doesn't have to be this complicated. The important thing is that you have a format that you use every single time. And so that's just one simple example. I like this one. We use this school-wide at Glen Forest. And this is the vocabulary lesson format. You can use this with any vocabulary. This works well, and we've got a couple of examples on the next slide. You introduce the word and the word's pronunciation. You give the student a simple definition. For some older students, you may have them analyze the word for stems. You provide characteristics to enhance the definition. Notice you're modeling all this. You're not saying, hey, does anybody know? You're modeling it. You provide examples and non-examples to the students. And then that's kind of you've modeled there. And then you start having students add to the list. We do together. And then the you do is step 6. You give them the opportunity to use that word during the lesson, embed it in something that you're doing in a bell ring or homework to demonstrate understanding of the word. We've got some great tools for you that you can use to, if you click on this, the Frayer model has steps for doing this. Here's a math vocabulary. When you're teaching math vocabulary, is a little bit different, but it's the same concept. And so those are some good ones that you can use.
Can I jump in on what
Sure.
on one of those steps that you were talking about, how important it was that you're not asking them if they know when you're first introducing this, you are leading it and you're doing the modeling. When I started doing my cheesy little date for the one-step equations, it's kind of easy to see that 2x, equals 14. And I'm like, so what's X? And they're like, it's 7. They can see that. And so I had a couple of kiddos, nice children, but they're like, why do I have to show my work? Why do I have to do it this way? Why do I have to go all through this? I was like, trust me, trust the process. You're going to be glad that, you followed the steps. And so, but I would not let them shout out the answer. I wouldn't let them explain how they did it. I showed the way it was supposed to be done. And we got through that. Then the next week we did the 2 steps. Then we're already adding in positive and negative numbers, which of course is making it more complex. And then we're adding fractions and decimals. And the one boy he's a trip, and I love him so much, but he was like, I get it now, because it was so easy for him to just be like, oh, I know. Because he's that one who always wants to participate. But I had to take control the situation and just kind of say, no, for a minute, it's Miss Sowers' show. I'm the hired help, and hired entertainment. And so I'm the one who's going to do all the modeling until I think you're firm. Until then, I will release you to do some on your own. So I just, that was part of the steps is very vital that I think we kind of tend to, overlook sometimes, especially if it appears that some kiddos are getting it. We've got to make sure we're doing enough modeling before we expect them to do it.
And enough we doing together.
Yeah, for
Make
sure.
sure they have it. I think it's really important. One of the things is we have to correct all errors. That's something we do in explicit instruction. And it needs to be immediate for students. So if you have a format so that students know that when there's an error, you may say, stop, listen, that answer is, and you say the answer and have students repeat it. And now let's see why this is the correct answer. If it's a strategy or rule, you'll go through that. You'll check to make sure they have it. And then depending on where they are in learning, you may give them another practice. So if they're at the acquisition stage, you want to do it again. Because the more they practice, the better they're going to get. If it's just a careless error, that you may not have to do that. So the correction format is the same format all the time. You're going to stop them. You're going to give them the answer. You're not going to say, oh, can somebody help Johnny out? You're going to be the provider. And then you're going to walk them through. If it's a simple fact, you may just give them the answer and have them repeat it. But when it's steps or a strategy, you do a little bit more. So basically, you're going to tell them the answer and then guide them to why. We need to correct every error when we see it and hear it in the classroom. It's really important for mastery learning.
And can I jump in on that one too?
Sure, absolutely.
Even if you didn't want me to, I'm going to. So this is very important. And I know sometimes, there's some teachers dealing with the littles that they don't want to like hurt their feelings or tell them that they're wrong. Well, you're not sitting there and saying, that's not right. All you're simply doing is saying the answer is 7, and this is why it's 7. And it helps kids know that it's okay to make mistakes, and they're going to hear that other kids are making mistakes as well, but it's not a big deal. You're just getting the right answer. It's being explained. They're repeating it back. Then they know it, and you can move on. Because what's happening, I think a lot in the elementary schools, and of course, middle school knows everything that goes on in elementary, just like high school knows everything that happens in middle. But I've heard it going on. Oh, well, you're close. That's close. Well, no, it's wrong. Regardless if it was close or not, it's wrong. And so, but you don't have to say you're wrong. The answer is this. This is why. Now, what was the answer? And then they're repeating it back to you. It kind of gets them used to making a mistake. And because mistakes happen, if you don't make a mistake, if kids aren't making any mistakes, then they're not learning anymore. We need to, up the rigor of what we're teaching. So, but it teaches them that it is okay to make an error. Someone's going to correct it. There's no need for a temper tantrum, crying, or, any cajoling. We need to skip those steps and just get to, this is the correct answer, because we got to move on to getting them to mastery on the content.
Perfect. Couldn't have said it better myself. That's why you're here. All right. So a couple of just resources for you. The Florida Center for Reading Research has some great instructional formats. They've got them for K through 3, but honestly, I've looked through them and you could use them with any grade level. You could change the content and make them work, except for the foundation reading skills. But this is part of that. This will take you to that. This QR code will take you to that website. Also, you do have to go through training, but the strategic instruction model for teaching all kinds of content is full of instructional formats. Teaching sentence writing, paragraph writing, there's so many wonderful ones. And I do know that we are going to be working with the Transition Alliance to be offering more training on the strategic instruction model to use in your classroom. But you may take a look at this and hope this might be something you'll want to look at to work with students. There's the references. We're done. And it's a good thing because we're about at that hour mark. I'm hoping that Jenny, are going to ask you while we're going through this, we're going to put a short evaluation in the chat box. Please take a minute and fill that out. It's important to us for you to give us feedback, but also we have a question about what other things might you like us to do so that we know what you need and we can plan those things. And also we produce a lot of one-pagers, some training videos, and we want to do what you need. Our evidence-based practices, a lot of them, some of the that I referred to today, are on our website, and you can get those there. Whoops, going the wrong way. Also, if you're not getting our newsletter, we would love for you to get it. We send it out once a month. It has all of our free training that's coming up. And we also have some communities of practice, and all of that is in that newsletter. So make sure you check that out. And then, of course, we're on social media. I want to be cute and popular. If you're not following us, we would love for you to follow us so that we can get to know you better. All right. Anything else? I'm going to quit sharing. Thank you for joining us today. And if you can always contact us, and hopefully you got those materials. When you complete the evaluation, it will send you your certificate for participation. Did I forget anything? I think Jenny, Deanna, did I forget? Ginger, did I?
All good.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the great information, Jennifer. A wonderful job.
Thank you so much.
She's awesome. I'm proud to know her. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.